Teach us, Kev.
Okay, it's 6 years. I've had this flu for 5 days. You might hear a cough or or a sneeze. That was a
I do
cough.
That's
wear a
probably
mask,
good
Anyway,
but we
on
do
I
a
don't
big.
want I don't want any sympathy. You could give me some sympathies that find that under S in the dictionary. So
Kevin,
this up,
change your background to a warmer climate. You might feel better.
yeah. So Parashat Tetzaveh, it goes on to the theme. The last couple of parashas about all the components of the Mizbeach and the temple and also it goes Parashat Tetzaveh is about the garments, the begadim of the Kohen Gadol, and there were uh, certain layers of clothing the Kohen Gadol had to wear, and he couldn't perform the service without those. You had to wear all of that clothing, and just a short. I don't go into too much detail. Um, there's a reason why you had to wear that clothing, and it can be related to us in the following way that if we go if we go to shul and pray, we need to be dressed a certain way. Like you're not going to go in your speedo to shul; it's inappropriate. So people should dress ideally as smart as they can. I don't always do this. As in the Kohen, even if he wore they didn't wear suits, we wore smart clothing. It wasn't acceptable for his avodah in the Beit HaMikdash. So that's just one of the themes and one of the ideas which is discussed.
I think that's important, Kevin. It is important. Thank you. Um, yeah, when you what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the screen, guys, because I just want to put something in context with you to show you where we're up to in the Mishnah. Now, if you can see, there's only the last part. There's two parts that we're dealing with now, but it's a little bit quicker. Um, So the first is the principle of these first witnesses are Zomimim, and they are put to death by their word, by the testimony of the second set of witnesses. If other witnesses come after the first set had already been discredited and the new set testify to the same crime as the first set, and those who discredited the first set through Hazama as well, but testifying that these new witnesses were also with him somewhere else at the time of the alleged crime, and still okay, so let's just go to the point at which we need it. So what it's saying here is that at the end of the day, if you've got this repeated process where a second set of witnesses keep placing the first set through this process of discreditation through Hazama, through conspiring testimony. We believe the second set. And we're saying if it's at the point of the sentencing before the verdict is carried out, all of these witnesses are executed as Eidim Zomimim, and the testimony of these two witnesses, if they're the second set, doesn't matter if there are other 100 sets of them that were with them somewhere else. We believe the second set. So Gavin had a problem with this, and he's in good company with Rav Yehudah because Rav Yehudah said, listen, this is a group of plotters who have conspired to discredit anyone who testifies against the accused. It's obviously inconceivable that every group that claimed to have witnessed that crime happened to be elsewhere in the company of the discrediting witnesses. Thus, their testimony is rejected, and only the first set of witnesses is executed. And the Gemara is going to explain why, but we can all have a tendency to gravitate towards Rav Yehudah. Because if the second set said that the first set were with them, you could say, okay, maybe the only first set were executed because perhaps they only found out the plot and it only looked suspicious after the second set were discredited we're discrediting a second set of witnesses and so on and so forth. But the first case seems pretty stock standard. So you can see how somebody can slip through the cracks. But we want to know, is there a precedent where of all the 100 first set of witnesses that come batch by batch, the second set can cause the first set to be convicted again and again? And then why would the first set be executed? Because if the plot is discovered, surely it's discovered relatively early on. And if not, what can we do about it? So that was the one question. The other question is, well, obviously, if all the rabbis are going against Rabbi Yehudah and we go according to the rabbis, there might be a problem with the way Rabbi Yehudah and ourselves are understanding it, or we need to understand what context Rabbi Yehudah is coming into. But the one thing I wanted to share specifically with Arthur, which Lance brought a point where he is wrong in this case, and I was wrong in this case, and I'll show you what that is, but I think Arthur's gone to pay, so he's not looking at his screen at the moment. I don't even know if he can hear me. But I'm going to share on the screen what I'm trying to say here. Give me a second. This is why I'm not mad about multitasking, guys. It actually disturbs me a little, to be honest. Is Arthur with us?
Yes, he's back.
Arthur?
I can hear you fine. I just went to go do something quickly.
No, I'm aware of that. Are you
I'm
still
on my Bluetooth. I
asking, or
can.
are you looking at your screen?
I have my screen. I'll put my glasses on to make it blind on the back. Yeah.
Tell me when you can see it, and then put yourself on mute because you're coming up with background noise. Can you see, Buddy? Arthur, before you put yourself on mute, can you see? Are your glasses on?
Yeah, I can see. I've got my glasses on and
All
I'm
right,
zooming.
now you can put yourself on mute. So, what we explained incorrectly last time, because the way Lance explained it, I actually agreed with him, and then it's not the case. Let me just point out something. I said if a second set of witnesses viewed a first set, they are known as witnesses because they viewed the first set. But that is not sufficient. Because if you look at it, it says, look at this, guys. By testifying that these new witnesses were also with them somewhere else at the time of the alleged crime. What does that imply? That the only reason we believe the second set is they have to have been with the first set at the time in a different location. Can you see that? Because otherwise, who's to believe, Gavin? The second set. If the first set said they were at Johannesburg and the second set said they were in Durban, why necessarily believe the second set? It's much more difficult to accuse the second set of lying if the first set was with them at a dinner in Durban. Am I correct or I'm not correct, Gav?
No, you are correct, but they can still be lying. How do you know that
Okay, no,
the first set,
we'll get to that, and it's going to be covered in the next mission or two.
unless the first set acknowledges that they were with the second set,
No,
but
well,
they won't.
obviously they won't because they get, but the point of it is it's easier to corroborate with people at the restaurant and other things as well. But it's not sufficient that they just said they saw them, because a second set can say they saw the first set and were mistaken. They were mistaken. They have to be with him, which is less likely that a mistake could be made because they might ask the second set, well, what were they wearing on the day? What did they order? What restaurant were you at together? Do you get it?
You mean they had to actually be sitting with them at the restaurant as opposed to sitting?
Correct. Because it says here, look at the Mishnah, by testifying that these new witnesses were also with them somewhere else at the time of the alleged crime. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, can everybody read that? So it wasn't that they were just witnessing the first set. If you go to dinner with somebody, you witness who you had dinner with. Yes, you're a witness, but you're also a participant in the interaction with them. And that's the one thing that I need to share with Lance, is that although I
So
explained
then you
it to
actually
Arthur,
can't make a mistake. Because if they're 5 tables away at a wedding, you can actually maybe make a mistake,
of course,
lighting and stuff like that.
of course. So the thing of it is, Lance did explain it to Arthur in a very nice way. After I said it, he clarified what I said, and he said, look, the second witnesses viewed the first set. So that is part of it, that they viewed, but it couldn't be where the first set didn't see the second set. It had to be, they might not acknowledge it, but they had to be with them somewhere else. Whether or not they'll acknowledge it is pretty unlikely if they're going to get a death penalty for being a group of plotters. But it certainly is a proviso. So Arthur, there are two things. Number one, they have to be with the first set, even if the first set don't corroborate it. And the other issue is, why do we believe the second set? So it's an instruction from Moshe at Har Sinai, but we're going to go into some of the problems and some of the solutions regarding that. But I just thought I'd let you guys know. Okay? Now, what is the Gemara going to bring? It's going to bring a case forward where, how can we execute the first? Yeah, Brendan?
I'm just, something came to mind. What happens if the first set of witnesses and the second set of witnesses are in a stalemate where they can't like disprove both of them? They kind of like, but they argue against each other.
Okay, that's an excellent question. So we have to discern, and the Gemara is going to bring this up towards the latter part. You have to discern the difference between a case of conflicting evidence or conflicting testimony versus integrity of the first set of witnesses being taken into account. Meaning, if there's a second set of witnesses that viewed the crime, or they said that the second set of witnesses said that the victim wasn't there that was murdered, or the murderer wasn't there that's murdered, they Adem Zomimim are not Adem Zomimim, because they are just witnesses that turn around and said, well, the murderer was there or the victim was there. So they have conflicting testimony. So we don't then necessarily hold the first set of witnesses liable. What happens is the second set contradict the first set, and it's thrown out of court. Now, it's because why? They're not, what's the definition, Brendan, of Adem Zomimim? What has to happen?
You got to find that it's false testimony from the witnesses.
No, Brendan, that's a vague answer. At this stage of the game, you're brighter than that, but I see now you do electronics, and I can't put a plug on without electrocuting myself. I wouldn't know the neutral from the live to the earth. But this you know by now. We've gone through it enough times. Guys, what are the criteria to define Adem Zomimim? Kevin?
That the Adem Zomimim will get the punishment or what they sought to get, to falsely accuse somebody of. They would get that.
That is
would
the
happen to them.
punishment. That's correct. I'm saying, what makes them Adem Zomimim? I need the
That
specific.
they want
The
to
false.
corrupt the court.
No, it's still vague. All right, I'm going to go through it with you guys again. It's good for my midot this just to relax and chill, even though we've been through it a million times. So the criteria is as follows: is that plotting witnesses or conspiring witnesses, namingly Adem Zomimim, get a Zomimim punishment, which is a reciprocal penalty of what they intended to do to their victim. What makes them conspiring witnesses, Gavin? Give me the three factors.
They're conspiring witnesses when they when other witnesses come and say they were somewhere else, they weren't at that location.
Can you be a bit more specific? You also need to be more specific in your answer. I know you're not.
Yeah, sorry, I'm still out of this, but okay, so it's so okay, so firstly, it has to happen. It has to happen when it's in between the off. So the second set of witnesses have to come after this after the sentencing, but before they're executed?
Not necessarily. It's a what happens if they come at any time in the court process? What happens to the Eidim Zomimim? Just clarify.
No, they won't get the death penalty if it comes at a different point in time.
Okay, and then what happens to the court case?
Then it's thrown out.
Correct. So that's the perfect answer, firstly, is that if they only get the reciprocal penalty, as Gavin reiterated, when the window period in terms of time is once the verdict is given against the defendant, but it hasn't yet been carried out. Okay, because sentencing and carrying out of that sentence is one process. In secular law, we said there are extenuating circumstances, there's motive, there are pre-felony charges, there's a myriad of factors where even if a verdict is reached, sentencing could be different depending on the different circumstances, but halachically it's the same. So Eidim Zomimim do not get the reciprocal penalty if the victim has already been killed or it's prior to the verdict against the defendant. Either way, so if it is before, then the case is thrown out of court. If the victim has already been executed, the Eidim Zomimim get punished in Shemaim, and it can be no kapora for them to receive the reciprocal penalty in this world. Whatever it is, whether it's a death penalty case, corporal or monetary case. So Gavin, the second set have to say about the first set what exactly?
That they were in a different location, that they couldn't have witnessed the
No, not
whatever.
only in a different location. The statement I'm looking for from you, which I know you know, as I just read it in the Mishnah, is they were with us somewhere else, and they couldn't have been at the scene of the crime. The Gemara says, by testifying that these new witnesses were also with them somewhere else at the time of the alleged crime. Okay? It's reiterated Mishnah. So it doesn't, it means that.
What did I say? They were just in a different location. Is that all I said?
Yeah, that's all you said, which
Okay,
is
sorry,
but it's just not
that's too
sufficient.
vague. No, it's nowhere near sufficient.
So, Arthur, step number one. And for example, there's got to be two second set of witnesses. So if Gavin and I are in a dinner with two people in Johannesburg, but they said they witnessed a homicide in Durban, and we say that we were with them both at RTGs in Johannesburg, then in that particular case, we were with them. We didn't just witness them. And therefore, they couldn't have been there. So why do they get the reciprocal penalty, Arthur?
It's just they lied. They basically wanted to harm the other person, and they weren't telling the truth. And it's only if it's actually been in the middle. If it's in the beginning or after,
Correct. But what happens if you've got a set of witnesses that lie in a normal capital case? What happens to them?
Well, it's perjury. Isn't it? It's,
Okay, but what's
they
the
go to jail.
what's the penalty for them?
You mean in secular court or in?
No, in a Lacha court. I don't care what happens in Hungary.
Okay, that's tricky. They get well, if they don't, they can get up to 39 lashes each.
Okay, so Arthur's conflating two issues, but it's reasonable. So where Arthur's valid is there is a concept where for false testimony, which is the 9th commandment, it's a negative commandment at which there are opinions that say if it's a non-action you can't get lashes, but there are other opinions that say that according to Ullah and certain other opinions that it's sufficient that because they're corrupting the ends of justice, they're liable to lashes. In terms of how many would depend on their health, etc., etc. So they are eligible for that, but they're certainly not eligible for the reciprocal capital punishment. Generally, what happens is the case gets thrown out of court. The reason why the Eidim Zomimim get punished in this case is because they weren't at the location. So clearly the intention, as Arthur said correctly, was evil. They lied in order to have an innocent person convicted by corrupting the justice system. And that's the issue. That's why if there are a first set of witnesses and a second set of witnesses, says Brendan, the victim was not there, or the murderer was not there, the second and first set testimony do not corroborate with each other, and therefore they cancel each other out. Whether or not they get lashes, I'm not sure. I don't think so, because it would be interesting to say once a verdict was passed, if they would still get lashes if the verdict hadn't been carried out. If it was a case of just testifying falsely as opposed to plotting witnesses, different. How could they testify falsely and not wish to injure the victim? We used a perfect example. If somebody's having an affair and they don't want to lose their marriage if they're with their secretary at the Protea Hotel, then they're going to lie. They're going to say it wasn't me. Or they're going to say, well, I didn't quite see what I said, because their aim wasn't sinister. They just don't want to lose half their assets and lose their wife of 30 years. Because men can have an affair and completely love their wives. They think with their little heads. So the thing of it is there's a difference between plotting, and clear thing of plotting is if your integrity is brought into question because you didn't even view the crime. And it's so bad, we said, is that even if this defendant was a habitual criminal and committed another murder or committed other crimes, and the second set actually feel very much in favor of the first set of witnesses to say, listen, you weren't there, but I don't blame you. This oak's a psychopath, the defendant. We don't blame you for wanting to get him killed. You were probably scared. The thing of it is, if at that time he wasn't convicted by the court, we give them the reciprocal death penalty, because what they intended to do to this victim is have him killed for a crime he did not commit. A fact of it is he could have a strew of bodies all across Joburg and be a psychopath killer, but they sought to have him killed for an incident he didn't commit. Do you get what I'm saying? So that was Rav's point before. So the point we're trying to say here is, number one, they have to be with the first set of witnesses somewhere else. It's easier to corroborate. And for the other reason that Gavin also reiterated, sometimes you can make a mistake from a far distance. It's very difficult for the first set not to squirm if the second set, but you ordered a burger, check with the waiter, his name was Stefan, or if he doesn't know his gender, Stephanie, whatever. But the thing of it is that it's much more difficult to refute, Gav. The person can, but even pre-forensic, it's reasonable. Does that make sense, Gav?
Yeah, and also if there's cross-examination, which I presume there would be, to check that the second witnesses are correct. When they were actually right there next to you, and like you say, they confirmed the burger and they confirmed the waiter and all of that. It's so hard for that first set to kind of worm their way out of it, because everything's going to be spot on.
But even if they do, and we believe the second set, when the Gemara says we believe the second set from Moshe at Har Sinai, I don't believe it's as simple as that. I don't believe that if they go to this extent that they're going to get 23 people on the Sanhedrin to put somebody to death, that they would be eagerly willing to kill two witnesses. Because in the case of Sanhedrin, Brendan, if they're willing to have 23 judges sit and not kill somebody that actually murdered, in the case where they're testifying against a murder and two people are going to die instead of one, how much more so are they going to not necessarily want to convict the first set of witnesses? So they're going to do everything in their power before they get the innocent defendant killed, and they're going to say whoever has testimony against the first set, let him come now before a verdict is reached. They're going to do their level best. So I'm sure they're going to cross-testify the second group of witnesses. In terms of are they believed, yes, if their testimony seems legitimate and the first set are legitimate and both are in denial, we believe the second set, which begs the question of how we answer Gavin and say, well, how come the second set of belief and isn't that available for corruption? So, Gavin, I can say to you exactly the same answer in the first set. If they owe R500,000 each to the defendant, and they figure it's better to get him killed than to pay that money, because it uses the example of a defamer which could divorce his wife, but he doesn't want to pay her the get. So he said during the betrothal period, she was unfaithful. Now, all he has to do is pay his ketubah, but when it comes to money, people sometimes would rather commit worse sins than pay off money. So how do we know, Gavin, that the first set aren't testifying against the defendant because of a number of reasons? They owe him a fortune of money in gambling debt. They feel maybe unsafe with this first defendant because he's a psychopath, or maybe the defendant maybe got busy with one of the witnesses' underage daughters, and they want to nail this pedophile, and they figure this is the way to. We don't know. We don't know how to believe the first set either. Whatever you could say about the second set, Gavin, you can say about the first. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely, it's always a problem.
So there has to be a cross testimony of witnesses and a myriad of other things that are brought into the fore. So I'm just going to share one or two things with the share, and then we can just move on. So we ended off with Rav Yehudah, who said, listen, something smells very fishy here. If there's a second set of witnesses, and you've got numerous first sets, and each one they say, no, they were with us, they were with us, they were with us, something smells off. It can't be that the whole world was basically with the second set of witnesses, as the Gemara is going to use the term. Can't be. So there's something off here. So in that case, we shouldn't believe the second set of witnesses according to Rav Yehudah, but the first set of witnesses do get killed, but none of the other sets. So we're going to say, listen, if we don't believe the second set, why would the first set get killed? And then we've got to see it from the position of the rabbis, who said even if 100 sets, first sets, come before the second set, we believe the second set. That's much harder to understand. So we're going to go through it in ensuing dafs. But let's just tackle this issue. So the Gemara wonders if the set of discrediting witnesses is assumed to be a group of plotters, even the first set of witnesses who testified to the crime should also not be punished. So why does Rav Yehudah say that the first set is executed? We on 5b1, by the way, just so you know.
I want to ask you, sorry, just to clarify, is that like 100 sets broken down into? I mean, is that 100 sets, or is it one set with 2 and then one set with 98, or they're all a whole bunch of 2s? What are they?
So the Gemara
said,
the Gemara basically says, just hang on a second. Yeah, it said even if that there were other 100 sets with them somewhere else, we believe to establish that all 100 sets of Zomamim. So I think it's a hyperbole. Doesn't mean there have to be 100 sets. What it's trying to say is we always believe the second set of witnesses, no matter how many times this occurs, that the second set said they were with the first set. I think that's the principle you have to derive. Doesn't matter if it's 80 or 100 or 200. It's using an expression.
Okay, and they saying, and that second set only saw that first set. They didn't see the other sets.
No. So what the Gemara, when we read the Mishnah, we said, listen, if the second set said that the first set were with them somewhere else, and then that first set are Adam Zomamim, and then there was another set that testified to have seen the defendant kill someone, and the second set said that the second set of first witnesses, this is going to confuse Arthur. So at this point, I'm going to say, it doesn't matter how many first sets of witnesses there are. Now, Arthur's bright, he'll get this. Every time the first set are discredited, we make them Adam Zomamim and we believe the second set. It doesn't matter how many times this occurs. And Rav Yehudah said this is not true. Because we
did kind of get that, yeah.
The second set can't be with the whole world. So if it happens once or twice or whatever, okay, maybe there was a big party. But how can every set be discredited by the second set saying they were with them somewhere else? Whereas the rabbis say we believe the second set no matter how many times this reoccurs. No matter how many times. And that's what we're dealing with here in certain Gemaras.
Oh, thanks.
So, so if the set of discrediting witnesses is assumed to be a group of plotters, even the first set of witnesses who testified to the crime should also not be punished. So we want to ask if this, not according to the rabbis, we're asking on Rav Yehudah, so why does Rav Yehudah say that the first set is executed? And the Gemara answers, Rav Abahu said, the Mishnah is discussing a case in which the court had already executed those first set of witnesses. But if the court had known in time, the first witnesses would not have been killed. So then a case is retried when there's a second set of witnesses said, hang on, we did see it. Okay? So the Gemara asks, well, what was? What's the point of telling us an execution performed in error? Because the whole point of the Gemara, the Mishnah is saying, is to give us a halachic ruling. So we need to know why bring that point. So Rava says, listen, the Mishnah is saying that when it says that the first set of witnesses are executed, if there's only one set, they are killed on the basis of hazama testimony, meaning they get the reciprocal punishment. Because at that point, there's nothing suspicious about the second set discrediting that single set. However, according to Rav Yehudah, if there's more than one set testifying to a crime and being discredited by the single set, then when this reoccurs a second time, the hazama testimony is suspicious and they're not killed, even the first set. So what the Gemara is saying is, according to Rav Yehudah, if the first set are discredited by the second set, they're going to be killed. But then a new set come and say, hang on, we also saw the defendant killed somebody. And the previous set of second sets of witnesses that got the first set to get the reciprocal death penalty, the case isn't finished. But the verdict's been given but hasn't been carried out. Now, the first set are very nervous. They're going to die. But then another set comes and say, hey, we also witnessed the crime. And suddenly the second set that testified against the first set said, no, wait, you were with us somewhere else. And then Rav Yehudah is saying that's starting to get suspicious. So if they catch it in time, the first set are not executed. If they don't, well, what was. If it occurs afterwards, the second time round, we suspicious. It depends on the timing. Okay? And the Gemara says, okay, but there's only one issue with it. The Gemara is using this term in Aramaic saying the Mishnah says only the first group is killed, indicating in that case in question that there are also other sets of witnesses. So if you say, like in the days of the week, you can say, okay, one day. So one day implies a day in and of itself. But if you say it's the third day of the week, you're implying there are other dates that come before it and other days that come afterwards, meaning it's multiple sets. So what the Gemara is saying, we've got a problem understanding the Mishnah because the Mishnah uses the term, it's the first set of Zomimim witnesses and the other Zomimim witnesses, which means why the first set killed if at that point you're aware that there are other sets of witnesses that are being discredited by a second set. Do you get what I'm saying? So Gemara said that's a bit of a problem. If you're going to say the first day, it's implying a second day. So the minute you say the first set of witnesses are killed by the second set's testimony, and there's another set of witnesses that have viewed the murder, and they say they are said by the second set to be with them somewhere else, then why the first set killed if the court case is still going on? If it's already happened that after the fact there's a new case and there's another set of witnesses say that the defendant killed, but that same set of second witnesses says, no, they were also with us at the party, then you can be suspicious. So it does leave a problem when the Gemara says, hang on, it's talking about multiple sets, and you order to use the first and second set and third set of the first group of witnesses testified against on the second group of witnesses, and we're saying the first are executed, it's a problem because they could either only be executed in error until your point of suspicion, according to Rav Yehudah. So why would the Mishnah use a numerical equivalent to saying they're sequential first sets of witnesses? So the Gemara says, listen, we can't resolve this issue of the Mishnah at this point. At the time of Mashiach, we might, but we're not able to. But according to other opinions, we're saying just this was a point of error. Now, we're still obviously going to establish why the rabbis have their particular opinion of how they can say the second set can keep discrediting numerous first blocks of witnesses. We're going to have to understand what that means exactly. All right, guys, I think we're done. Any questions? We've got a minute left. Okay. Brendan, does it make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got a question. So
Yeah.
2 sets of witnesses. What happens if there's like 3 or 4, 5 sets of witnesses?
Of first witnesses.
No, like second witnesses, third witnesses, fourth. Has there been like
So
a count like that?
you're confusing two different concepts, and I'm pleased we're going through this because
Oh, the incident, I think that's what I
so
think you had to distinguish.
let's exactly as Kevin said. Kevin couldn't have said it better. We are saying there's a difference between who witnessed the crime and who witnessed the witnesses by being with them somewhere else. That's how we distinguish it. And the
Okay.
Gemara is saying that there are multiple sets that allegedly saw the crime.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying? So that's how they're all
Yeah.
made to be
Yeah.
able to.
Okay. Now that makes sense then.
All right, but we
Damon, there's a concept in law, defeating the ends of justice, that you mess around the legal system, like some of these Zommermen were doing, and you're wasting resources.
yeah, but they don't
And it's
deserve to die because of it. Because we do.
no,
Yeah, but it's
no,
not.
sure.
It's not smart. I agree with you. It could end up in
Yeah,
I agree with you, Kevin. And Shemaim, they don't hold this as a joke.